Hello, and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm your host, Valerie King, R&R's editor-in-chief, and I'm joined today by Andrew Zavodney, chairman of the board and CEO of Kustom US, which is a privately held, full-service property restoration and remediation company headquartered in Longwood, Florida. Kustom has experienced consistent growth under Andrew's leadership, expanding exponentially since 2000 by streamlining operations, acquiring new businesses, and embracing a people centered approach. Now, as a part of its long term strategy, Kustom is planning to continue a series of acquisitions and partnerships. In fact, it's kicked this year off, this 2022 year off, with the acquisition of Five Star Restoration and Construction in California. So we invited Andrew, who also happens to be VP of the Restoration Industry Association Board of Directors, to talk about Kustom's strategic approach to not only growth, but also sustainability by focusing on people, not just operations. We'll cover company culture, employee value proposition, corporate governance, M&A due diligence, transparency, and more. So tons of hot topics. Thank you so much for joining me, Andrew.
Valerie, pleasure to be here today. Look forward to sharing our story with you and the rest of the restoration community.
Thanks. All right. So, first, can you share a bit about the history of Custom US? I understand this is a third generation company.
Yes, absolutely. So, Custom was founded in July 29th of 1968 by my family, and we were a family owned business up until the summer of 2016 when we began using our equity as currency to effectuate transactions. We are now a owner operated owned business, and we've since added to our shareholder cap table to the tune of about 30 people now.
And can you share a little bit more about what Custom looks like today, the services you offer, where you're located, staff size, that kind of thing?
So, Custom is located throughout the US. We have over 25 brick and mortar offices. We are currently just over 400 employees with the addition of Five Star in Sacramento and Fairfield, California. We're working largely with commercial clients. We do offer restoration services to the residential market as well. And we are continuing to grow strategically in critical markets.
Very good. So, as chairman of the board and CEO, how would you describe the role you play in the business? What are your main areas of focus?
My main area of focus is the people and ensuring that we drive the culture and we bring good people, the right people that are culturally aligned to the organization, whether that's a single hire or an acquisition such as Five Star, which we took 27 months collectively to vet the business, the market, and the people. That's my core focus.
Very thorough vetting, which we'll talk more about later.
Yes.
Yeah. So exponential growth, I mentioned that when I introduced you. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means, this exponential growth? How much growth are we talking?
So we're talking 150x since I purchased the business for my parents in 2000. And we've done so um, on the using the backbone of our 50-plus-year-old balance sheet. We have not brought private equity in. We don't intend to do so. In 2015, when I decided to head down the inorganic growth path, I had a theory that we could do this and do this without private equity. And, lo and behold, 10 partnerships or transactions later, it's proof positive. So it's been a great vision and execution.
Okay. Before we dig deeper into this area of growth, could you explain your philosophy? I know you've talked about in past conversations, your philosophy on careful growth that's strategic and sustainable.
So my philosophy, again, it revolves around the people. Again, whether we're hiring a general manager in a market or we're going to explore a potential transaction, the diligence revolves around the people and it is a series of meetings, and we'll use 5 Star as an example because it's a very recent transaction. We took 27 months to get acquainted, and the 5 Star leadership attended several of our leadership summits, which we open up potential sellers to our board, our senior leadership team, and former sellers, and it's a very open, relaxed, collaborative venue. We do this twice a year. It was something we started doing in November of 18 in the context of being transparent and open, knowing that a seller has one opportunity to sell their legacy business to ensure their employees, possibly family members, are headed into a very positive situation.
Thank you. More on that private equity point you made earlier. You are not backed by private equity. Is there more to
We
that? Why not? Why'd you decide?
um so I there's obviously good and bad restoration contractors, private equity firms, journalists, right? So there's contrast in every industry. And I'm sure there's a great private equity company out there. The the private equity companies that have come into our space, we have to wait and see what happens. But to date, the research that I've done has really caused a lot of caution in terms of bringing private equity in. And candidly, we haven't needed to do so. And we've been able to grow organically and inorganically. And we've been able to retain the value creation and share it among our legacy employees, former sellers, and some younger generations. So there hasn't been a need. And it's not something that we're considering or would consider at this time.
Got it. Okay. So obviously, we've talked about the fact that Custom has plans for continued growth through acquisition, but and you talked about this before. These deals are often a long time coming, and that's on purpose. So, can you talk about that due diligence that goes into your acquisitions, including what you've likened to a dating process?
Yeah, so it is, a series of meetings. As an example, I was in, Arkansas last night meeting with a potential seller. First time, first meeting, and the virtual world works well. And I would tell you the limitations are pretty abundant when you get into conversation and meeting with a potential seller, meeting their team, and viewing their facilities and their contents cleaning, and really understanding the backbone of their operation. And I just believe that doing the due diligence and doing it in person in their market, traveling to them, you're investing yourself in the process. And it's something that I do personally, and I have traveled throughout North America, Europe to meet with potential sellers, and it's been a great journey, quote unquote, of my life. It's something I've really enjoyed doing.
Okay. So, you talked a little bit about transparency earlier. Could you elaborate on the importance of transparency in these partnerships that you build through acquisitions, why it's important, and different ways you might infuse it?
So transparency is foundational to our success, right? It starts with, our employees within the organization and sharing everything that's going on within the business, including financial information, strategic plans, providing our operating folks access to our board of directors, and our board of directors access to our operating folks in our leadership summits. I think it's critical to building trust, and trust is really what builds value and engages emotion in people. So it's simple to talk about. It's vulnerability, right? And it's something that I did, and I'm had a little trepidation as I ventured down this path and executing this vision. But I would tell you today, so we put the board in place in 2016, and it's been one of the best decisions of my professional life.
Wow. Okay, so
And I
go
would
ahead.
tell you that, yeah, I would tell you that the people that have come into the organization recognize the level of transparency and the fact that the the they have access to board members, and the board members have access to our operating folks, and the information is not being filtered by me going both ways, up and down, right? So I think there's inherent value in that, and it really builds an organization. And although we're not a public company, a lot of our behaviors would resemble that.
Uh, Yeah, that is very intriguing, that model that you have. And speaking of the people that are noticing the value of this, I wanted to talk
Right.
about company culture a little bit. I
Sure.
realize as you acquire companies, you've talked about the significance of preserving the best parts of company culture. Obviously, new business, melding with yours. So,
Right.
what do you mean by that? That preserving the best parts of company culture, and how do you do that?
So I think it starts with an initial interview if we are bringing a new person into the organization, or the meeting that I had last night. And I would tell you that the best parts are, it's got to be a substantial cultural alignment for an employment engagement to work, or a potential transaction to work. The businesses, the leaders, the team, they need to be culturally aligned, and that's that's foundational to our success. Where, you know, maybe some of the consolidation efforts focus on purely financial metrics. We put an inordinate amount of time and resources in really ascertaining culture on the front end, and making multiple trips, both us as the acquirer and sellers, to visit each other's facilities and operating teams to ensure that there is a critical alignment. And again, speaking very recently about Five Star, um, I think that the team there made multiple trips to Orlando to visit our corporate office, to meet our administrative teams. They spent time with our board and the entire management, and of course, former sellers.
Very good. Okay, so we have it down how you really focus on fitting with organizations you end up partnering with people you bring into the organization. What how would you describe your company's culture or your vision for it or both? What is that like to be with Custom?
I mean, it's open, transparent, collaborative, supportive, high cadence, highly accountable. But I think that there's a nice balance that allows people to, work hard, rise to the top. There's no sacred cows at Custom, if you will. So I don't know, it's hard to describe because I've done it. It's come natural to me. So it's not something we ran to. It's something that has evolved. And I would tell you, Valerie, that it probably started with my grandparents, who established the architecture for the business very early on in 1968.
Very nice. The theme of transparency continues. So, leadership, we have this understanding that you have a board, which is very, you don't hear about that all the time in a non public company, which is intriguing. Anything more on, leadership? So often hear about its importance when it comes to company culture. So, I'm wondering how you describe Custom's approach to leadership.
So again, it starts with transparency, right? And we did our first transaction in 2016, and I, put the shoe on the other foot, if you will. And I said, if I was selling my company, and if I was taking equity as the sellers did, what would I want? And I made a list. I'd want audited financials. I would want a board in place. I would want access to board minutes. I would, want to make sure that the board meetings were not wine and steak dinners, and that they were real, right? Everything was legitimate. And so that was the foundation for making that decision in terms of putting the shoe on the other foot. What's the right thing to do?
All right. So, corporate governance. Can you talk more about what that means? And, you've said it's a passion area of yours. So, can you define it and then really tell
S-
us how it's coming to life at
s-
Custom?
Yeah, so corporate governance is a thing, right? It's a decision you make, you put people in place, you give them the authority, right? So when I put a decision-making board, not an advisory board in place, I went from a having 100% control of the business to having one vote. And it was a conscious, deliberate decision to do that. And again, there's vulnerability in that, but I was confident that putting a board in place would create the transparency, the accountability, and it would actually make me better as a person. And I would tell you that we've done 23 board meetings since the inception of the board, and as I look at my professional growth through the course and the over that period of time, it's been tremendous. We've got a lot of really sophisticated, really engaged board members that today, I look forward to our board meeting on Friday where we're going to go over annual operating plans. And I know there will be tough questions, and I got to really think about the answers because as you go forward, there's always reflection, and it's part of the accountability and transparency that we've woven into the fabric of this business.
Now, another investment I know you're making, especially relevant in the tight labor market we find ourselves in, is employee value proposition. What does that entail?
EVP is a hot topic today, and it is um, really foundational to talent retention and talent acquisition. In August of 21, we brought on a new director of HR. This individual came from Turner Construction, very strategically minded HR leader, one that we are grateful to have on our team. And Matt is going to take Custom in a completely better new direction and will really, really drive our EVP. It's a core initiative that we're talking about within the company and even at the board level. And it has several elements to it. You know, wages are obviously a part of the employee value proposition, but it's a pretty broad topic today in our industry.
Very good. Thinking more about employees and kind of tying it into the leadership topic we talked about before this, can you speak a little bit about your leadership style and your philosophy on leading by example?
Sure, sure. So coming into the business in 1989, I had graduated from college and I thought I had all the skills and experience that I needed, to lead the organization right out of college, right? And there was a shrewd, harsh awakening, an unorthodox upbringing. I had, my dad and my grandfather asked me to, well, they didn't ask me actually. They told me if I wanted to join the company, I had to work in the field. And the first step to working in the field was signing up and participating in a building trades apprenticeship program. So I did that for 5 years. I spent a total of just over 10 years working in the field, not on Mondays and Fridays after lunch. It was full time. I worked in the field and I learned a tremendous lesson about, life and business and myself. And it's really foundational to my leadership today, leading by example. And, today is not uncommon for me to go onto a job site and engage with the folks in the field, physically engage. And if it still feels good, it's still a part of the culture and the organization and my leadership style. So obviously being able to see, feel, and touch what's going on, but my experience in the field really gives me insight into ensure that we're doing things correctly and that we're on the cutting edge of every project.
Very good. Now, you recently authored a thought leadership piece for R&R on embracing diverse perspectives in the workplace, all relevant to leadership and the employees. Can you share a few highlights from that piece and really the message you hope to convey?
Sure, right. I mean, the foundation of the article, hate to keep going back to it, but it's all about transparency and accountability, open door policy, embracing and welcoming, debate, and really, in a leadership environment, putting, going shoulder to shoulder with people, debating points passionately, and taking yourself out of the corporate hierarchy and going, all right, we're a team, we're here, we're going to be open, we're going to be transparent, we're going to welcome uncomfortable debate and diverse opinions to get to a higher place. So it's an article. It's going to be one of many that we continue to write about transparency, accountability, and our drive to be different as we go forward.
Thanks so much. Okay, before we close off the interview, a few more questions. First,
Sure,
of course, I'm
sure.
curious what's next for Custom. Can you give us any hints or previews as to what's ahead, at least in 2022, if not beyond?
Well, I'm working on a very exciting article that I can't
Nice.
wait, that I cannot wait to publish. So that's become a passion of mine, really, to telegraph, you know, what we're doing and why we're doing it and why we believe it's not just different to be different, but it's much better, and it's going to be a longer term, more sustainable growth. So what's different and what's new? You know, I guess without giving up our secret sauce, we've got a lot of exciting things going on, and both the employee value proposition, organic growth strategies, inorganic growth strategies, and we'll be sure to keep in touch with you guys.
Very good. I'm looking forward to following the path forward as you evolve
Yes.
and sustainably and strategically expand. So, could you share a little bit about your role in the RIA, the Restoration Industry Association Board of Directors? What are your key objectives there? How would you highlight any accomplishments?
So I am new to RIA. I really, you know, developed an interest and really began following RIA. We were members, but I was not involved in it until I engaged with Mark Springer and Katie Smith. I believe they've really done a great job transforming RIA and really driving value back to the industry. And I'm particularly interested in AGA and some of the initiatives that they're working on. And I am still learning. We've had a couple RIA board meetings and AGA committee meetings. So, still learning, very, very passionate about what they're doing, the direction they're going, and happy to support it both in person and financially.
Thanks for that. Okay, last question. What key trends in restoration as an industry overall stand out in your mind as an owner and someone who's growing and interacting with several other business owners and has, three generations behind you and tons of experience?
So the big trend in restoration right now is consolidation. And I have my thoughts, my theories, and how this all pans out, if you will. And I guess we will see what happens long term. But it's definitely an exciting time. I'm very bullish about the industry, the direction it's going, and some of the trends that I see. Consolidation. That I've seen a recent movement of industry A players on the heels of some of these private equity investments. So it's been a good thing.
Thank you so much. This has been
You're
awesome. I
welcome.
appreciate it, Andrew. Yes. All right. So
You're
before
welcome.
we go, I lied. I actually do have one more question, and that is where can listeners go to connect with you or to learn more about Custom US?
Our website, follow me on LinkedIn. I would say are the two key areas. And again, we're going to continue to telegraph our our thoughts, leadership, and kind of what we see in the restoration industry going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, listeners and viewers, I definitely encourage you to check out Andrew's most recent article I mentioned earlier, which is Daring to Be Wrong: Why Divergence Drives Dividends. It's on our site. And as he mentioned, keep your eye out for more thought leadership pieces from him on the topics we discussed and more. For more insights on restoration, remediation, and the people behind it all in general, visit our website, randrmagonline.com, also Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. If you haven't yet, please be sure to follow the podcast. That's how you keep up with all of our latest episodes. And if you could, please give us a quick review and rating. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, so we invite you to follow us on social too. This has been R&R's Ask the Expert. Thank you for listening.